So who was the man at the center of a faith that now spans the entire globe? We're going to explore Muhammad the person, behind the prophet. And to do that, we're drawing on some incredible insights from Sheikh Mohammed el-Shanawi. We're going to look at what he was like, his trials, and this amazing resilience that really defined his entire life.
All right, so let's just jump right in with a question that's surprisingly personal, one that his own companions were asked all the time. Because, it's one thing to hear about some historical figure, but it's another thing entirely to actually picture them. So the big question is, what did he actually look like?
Well, according to the people who knew him best, his appearance was, wow, he was just unforgettable. From a distance, they said he was just remarkable, but up close, exceptionally handsome. Get this, one of his companions said that on a night with a full moon, the prophet's face was brighter than the moon itself. He had a strong build, medium height, and was apparently always smiling. And when he spoke, his words were slow, they were clear, methodical, so much so that people would just hang on to his every single word.
So yeah, you can imagine, this presence he had was just incredibly powerful. It left a huge impression on absolutely everyone he met. And this quote, this really just sums it all up, doesn't it? There was this sense of awe that just surrounded him, an image that once you saw it, you just couldn't forget it. It really paints a picture of a man with a truly extraordinary presence.
Okay, so this brings us to a huge question, a real puzzle. If he was this remarkable and his message was so clear, then why? Why was he met with such intense, unbelievable hostility? Let's dig into the reasons behind this rejection.
This analogy from the source material really gets to the absolute heart of it. The problem wasn't a lack of proof or evidence. The problem was a willful refusal to accept it. It's like finding the truth can be the easy part. Actually wanting the truth, that's what's really hard.
Okay, now this is fascinating. This is what the source calls a kind of reverse engineering of rejection. So first, the scholars at the time, they knew a prophet was coming. They were expecting one. But when he appeared and he was from outside their tribe, their immediate reaction was denial. So they tried to test him, right? They came up with these trick questions about the soul designed to stump him, but he answered them perfectly through divine revelation. And that's the key part. They were cornered. The proof was right there. So they had to pivot. Their argument completely changed from, "You're not a prophet at all," to, "Okay, fine, you're a prophet, but just for the Arabs."
And this is where the story takes a really dark turn. Because when all the intellectual arguments failed, when their excuses just fell apart, his opponents turned to something much worse. They turned to violence.
And we're not just talking about verbal opposition here. No, there were multiple documented attempts to kill him. Different tribes tried to assassinate him. And then, near the very end of his life, a woman actually tried to poison him. He survived it, but the effects of that poison, they stayed with him. He felt it right up until he passed away about a year later.
And yet, in the middle of all this intense suffering, this period was also filled with these moments of just profound miracles. It creates this incredible contrast, human cruelty on one side and divine intervention on the other.
There's one story that just illustrates this perfectly. So he's giving a sermon, and a man stands up and interrupts him, begging for rain because this terrible drought was just devastating everyone. And the sky, it was totally clear, like glass. So the prophet just raises his hands to pray, and before he even puts them down, clouds start gathering and the rain begins to fall. Just like that. Fast forward 1 week, the same man comes back, but this time he's begging for the rain to stop. It had been flooding for 7 straight days. So the prophet prays again, and the clouds literally part, forming a perfect ring, a crown, right around the city.
But even with miracles like that, his path was never, ever easy. There's this core principle in Islamic tradition that says the prophets are the ones who suffer the most. And for Muhammad, there was one day that he himself said was the absolute hardest of his entire life.
His wife Aisha once asked him, was there ever a day harder than the Battle of Uhud, a battle where he was badly injured? And he said yes, the day he went to the city of Taif. See, after being driven out of Mecca, he went there looking for support. And the leaders, they didn't just reject him, they turned the city's children on him, telling them to throw stones at him and his adopted son, Zayd, until their legs were literally bleeding. And in that moment of just total despair, the angel of the mountains came and offered to crush the entire city for him, to just end them. But he said no. Instead, he prayed for their descendants, hoping they might one day accept the message.
That moment, that unbelievable capacity for mercy, right in the face of such cruelty. It really points to the ultimate theme of his entire life, a legacy built on profound resilience.
As he was nearing the end of his life, during his final illness, his wife Aisha said they could hear him repeating these words over and over. You see, he had been taught that prophets are given a choice: stay in this world or meet God. And as she realized what was happening, she said, he's not choosing us. His desire was for what came next.
And his very last pieces of advice to everyone were so simple but so profound. First, he kept repeating the prayer, that connection to God. And second, he said, fear Allah regarding those under your authority. Basically, be mindful of God and how you treat the people you're responsible for. It's really about two things: the rights of the Creator and the rights of His creation.
You know, to really get a sense of this resilience, there's a beautiful poem by Sheikh Ahmed al-Shukri that just captures his journey perfectly. It starts with his childhood as an orphan, a life that began with loss and forced him to rely on God from the very beginning.
The poem then moves to that immense personal grief of what's known as the Year of Sorrow. This was when he lost his wife Khadija and his protective uncle Abu Talib, his two biggest pillars of support, in the very same year.
And then, of course, it revisits that day in Taif, his hardest day, a moment of just total humiliation and physical pain, where he went looking for support and was met with nothing but stones and laughter.
And it ends by reflecting on a whole lifetime of loss. I mean, losing children, cousins, friends, and yet he never once showed distress from the tests that came from God. His focus was always on what was eternal.
So in the end, the story of Muhammad is really a story of just extraordinary resilience. It's a faith that was forged in hardship, that was tested by loss, and that was ultimately defined by mercy. It was a personal strength that became the very foundation for a message that's still resonating, 1,400 years later? And that really leaves us with one final thought. When you look at a life filled with so much trial, but also so much unwavering principle, it makes you ask the question, what is the ultimate measure of a legacy?